For millennia, humanity has gazed at the stars, wondering about the mysteries that lay beyond our world. The cosmos, an endless tapestry of light and shadow, beckoned. However, to journey there, to touch the sky, remained an impossible dream, until a turning point in history shifted our gaze from the battlefield to the infinite frontier above. This is the beginning of an amazing story. In the mid-20th century, a time scarred by global war gave rise to a new kind of conflict, the Cold War. Not with weapons and tanks on open battlefields, but a simmering rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Two titans, each convinced that their way of life was supreme, locked in an epic struggle for global dominance. This intense struggle seeped into every corner, especially in science and technology. The Soviet Union and America were racing to demonstrate their power, not just on Earth, but beyond. As fears of nuclear power grew, their attention shifted to a new frontier: outer space. Whoever reached the cosmos first would not only represent their egos, but also their entire ideology as the best nation that ever existed on Earth. However, sending humans into space was incredibly risky. How would the body react to a zero-gravity environment? Could anyone survive extreme speeds and accelerations? And once they were out there in space, would they be able to return safely to Earth? Therefore, scientists were seeking answers through a controversial yet necessary approach: animal experimentation. At that time, America and the Soviet Union had launched many creatures into space: rats, rhesus monkeys, dogs, even fruit flies. Many perished and very few survived unscathed. They were true pioneers, unwittingly laying the foundation for humanity's cosmic ambitions, facing the ultimate unknown. Then, in 1957, the Soviet Union achieved a great success. They successfully launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite in the world, a victory that resonated throughout the world. Not long after that, Sputnik 2, which carried a brave stray dog named Laika, made her the first animal to orbit the Earth. The Soviet Union had taken significant steps forward. On the other hand, the United States still struggled. Their early attempts to send monkeys into orbit faced setbacks. Finally, success arrived with Abel and Baker, two female squirrel monkeys, becoming the first primates to survive a return trip from space. Yet the USSR had already launched and landed dozens of dogs. There was no denying it. America was lagging. Their ultimate goal was clear and focused: to send selected and the best individuals into space, the astronauts. These astronauts were not just passengers of the spacecraft. They needed to perform various important tasks. One important question: could motor tasks be performed in space? All previous test subjects only participated in the journey. While survival had been proven, human functionality remained a crucial question mark. On the part of the United States, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, needed a test subject that could provide more accurate and relevant data. At that time, their decision was quite revolutionary: a chimpanzee. There were many surprising similarities between chimpanzees and humans. Similar organ placement, almost 99% of our DNA, and response times to stimuli that were only slightly slower than ours. If a chimpanzee could survive, it was likely that humans could too. Therefore, NASA redirected and focused its attention to the Holloman Aerospace Medical Center, HAM Center, in Alamogordo, New Mexico. 40 chimpanzees were selected as candidates and participated in the U.S. space program Project Mercury, or Mercury mission. Among them was a very young, playful, and a well-tempered male chimpanzee, known only as Number 65. Born in Cameroon, Central Africa, in July 1957, the little chimpanzee was purchased by the U.S. Air Force at just 2 years old. This was the beginning of the incredible journey of a brave chimpanzee who would later be known as Ham. Unbeknownst to many, Ham was destined to be recorded in the world's history, especially in aerospace. Starting in July 1959, under the close supervision of neurologist Joseph V. Brady, 2-year-old Ham and other chimpanzee candidates began an intensive 15-month training program. They each accumulated 219 hours of specialized instruction at the Holloman Aerospace Medical Center. The training focused on performing simple, measurable tasks in response to specific lights and sounds. This would later lay the foundation for Ham's incredible journey into space. Using a controversial process called avoidance conditioning, experts and trainers trained Ham and other chimpanzee candidates to perform tasks under pressure. They would receive mild electric shocks on the soles of their feet if they failed to pull the lever within 5 seconds after seeing a flashing blue light. If they pulled the correct lever in the allotted 5 seconds, they would be rewarded with tasty banana pellets and a sip of water. Among all the chimpanzee candidates, Ham was one of the most outstanding. His handler, Edward C. Dittmer, remarked, "He was wonderful and so well-tempered." This remarkable intelligence enabled Ham to tackle other tests, like choosing the shape that didn't match from a set of 3, a quite complex task that he would later have to perform in orbit. Ham was not trained to be a pilot, but as a living laboratory. For that time, Ham was one of the best test subjects to understand the physical and mental dangers of space travel. The data obtained during his training and learning would be invaluable, paving the way for human missions. From this Mercury-Redstone 2 (MR2) mission, which was part of the Mercury project, to the ambitious upcoming space journeys. A funny yet touching story, an anecdote, about a veterinarian who gave a peeled banana to Ham just before the rocket sled ride launched. When Ham was about to eat it, the rocket sled ride suddenly began to launch, and the banana splattered on Ham's face. The next time, Ham took the peeled banana, and with a mischievous intent, smeared it directly on the veterinarian's face. As time passed, the class of 40 chimpanzee candidates was gradually reduced to 18, and then to the final elite group consisting of 6. Ham was among this select few. Then, on January 2, 1961, these highly trained chimpanzee candidates were sent to Cape Canaveral, Florida, where crucial final preparations were made for humanity's leap into space. The day before the historic launch, James Henry from the Space Task Group and veterinarian John Mosley conducted a final examination of the 6 chimpanzee candidates. As a result, they confidently selected one playful and well-behaved young male chimpanzee as the primary candidate, Ham. After that, Ham was given a low-residue diet and equipped with vital biosensors. In the early hours of January 31, 1961, Ham was outfitted into a custom-made spacesuit and placed into a specially designed seat, a contoured couch. Then, Ham was transported to the Mercury-Redstone 2 rocket launch pad for his historic flight, which would be remembered for all time. With just 90 minutes to go, Ham, the 44-month-old chimpanzee, was described as still active and enthusiastic. At the launch pad, sensors were attached to Ham's body to monitor his vitals, and he was securely strapped into the compact-designed BioPack couch, where he would perform his assigned tasks, all monitored by advanced computers on the ground at the control center. After that, Ham and his BioPack couch were carefully placed into the Mercury-Redstone 2 capsule, which was equipped with control systems to regulate temperature, pressure, and provide oxygen. Ham patiently waited inside, peeking out through the plexiglass window of the capsule. Ham was then secured inside the Mercury-Redstone 2 spacecraft. Shortly after, Ham was taken by an elevator to the top of the towering Mercury-Redstone 2 rocket, preparing to be a silent witness in the history of spaceflight in America and the world. The moment of truth approached. The air started to crackle around Launch Complex 5, LC-5, at Cape Canaveral, Florida. After being delayed for a moment, the Mercury-Redstone 2 rocket launcher began to ignite. Finally, on January 31, 1961, at 11:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the mighty Mercury-Redstone 2 rocket booster roared to life, shaking the very ground beneath it. With a blinding flash and a thunderous roar, it shot into the air, carrying Ham into space. Truly, an incredible historic journey had just begun. 1 minute after launch, the computer at the control center detected a critical problem. The flight path was 1 degree higher than it should be, and it continued to rise. A faulty fuel pump was injecting too much liquid oxygen, disturbing the trajectory. The rocket was exceeding its thrust, faster than planned, triggering an emergency abort sequence. Premature fuel depletion initiated the cancellation sequence. The Mercury-Redstone 2 spacecraft was fiercely jettisoned from its booster rocket, subjecting Ham to a shocking force of 18 g, which was 7 g more than anticipated and 2 g more than what human astronauts experience during training. However, after the initial shock, Ham's heart rate and breathing returned to normal. At almost the same time, the computer at the control center detected an alarming drop in cabin pressure on the Mercury-Redstone 2 spacecraft and the oxygen supply. Fortunately, Ham was safe. The levels inside his capsule remained stable, and his life support system was functioning perfectly. He was a calm presence amidst the chaotic journey, a true testament to the engineering that protected him. For 16.5 minutes, Ham experienced an extraordinary flight, reaching speeds of 8,270 kilometers per hour and an altitude of 253 kilometers above the Earth. He felt weightless for 6.6 minutes. Despite the unexpected speed and the unsettling feeling of zero gravity, Ham performed all assigned tasks without a single problem, proving his remarkable training and resilience. Ham performed his tasks well, pushing levers about 50 times during the flight. After the harrowing flight, it was time for Ham to return to Earth. Unfortunately, the lack of the retro rocket caused the capsule to re-enter the atmosphere at excessive speed. Ham had to experience a force of 14.7 g during re-entry. However, in the end, the Mercury-Redstone 2 capsule was able to splash down at about 12:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the Atlantic Ocean, located about 679 kilometers from the launch site. On the same day, a few hours later, the capsule was successfully rescued and lifted onto the USS Donner ship. The capsule appeared to have severe damage, leaking, and was filled with a lot of seawater. Finally, aboard the USS Donner ship, a shaky and restless Ham was pulled out of his capsule. He was exhausted, dehydrated, and had a bruise on his nose, but remarkably, he was still alive. Although his trainer saw deep fear in his eyes and a primatologist, Jane Goodall, later noted extreme fear, Ham seemed quite relieved and calm. He eagerly accepted an apple and half an orange. After Ham's rescue, NASA praised him as a brave chimpanzee who unwittingly contributed invaluable insights to the progress of space science. However, other sources, including Jane Goodall, expressed deep concerns, stating that the journey frightened Ham. Ham's refusal to return to his seat in the old capsule for a photo is clear evidence of his suffering. Initially, Ham was only known as Number 65 before he safely returned to Earth. And after his landing, he was officially given the name Ham, which is believed to be an acronym for Holloman Aerospace Medical Center, Ham Center. The name Ham was also a tribute to the commander of the Holloman Aeromedical Laboratory, Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton Ham Blackshear. Shortly after that, Ham became known as Ham the Chimp, or Ham the Astrochimp. And only 3 months after the Mercury-Redstone 2 mission with Ham the Chimpanzee, on May 5, 1961, Alan B. Shepard Jr. conducted the Mercury-Redstone 3 mission, which was the first manned spaceflight mission by an American astronaut, in a spacecraft he called Freedom 7. The test flight of Ham provided important data necessary for NASA to make Alan B. Shepard Jr. the first American astronaut to travel into space, an achievement that would not have been possible if Ham had not demonstrated that humans could survive and even work in space. After his incredible historical journey, Ham the Astrochimp retired from NASA in 1963. On April 5, 1963, Ham was transferred to the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., where he lived quietly for 17 years, before joining a small group of chimps at North Carolina Zoo on September 25, 1980. There, he was eventually reintroduced to other chimpanzees, found a mate, started a family, and enjoyed his peaceful retirement after his extraordinary service. One day, on January 19, 1983, at the age of 25, Ham was found peacefully resting after dying from chronic heart and liver disease. Ham's body was then buried in front of the International Space Hall of Fame in Alamogordo, New Mexico, a tribute that Ham truly deserved. as expressed by a famous photographer from Life magazine, Ralph Morse. Alan Shepard is a hero, without a doubt. But every time someone refers to Alan Shepard as the first American astronaut in space, I would like to remind them about a little young chimpanzee that beat him, Ham. Ham, the Astrochimp, the first hominid to truly pave the way for the historic human spaceflight. His journey proved that living beings can not only survive, but also can thrive in the universe, inspiring all of us to reach for the stars, and forever reminding humanity of the unsung heroes in the greatest endeavors of humankind.